Welcome, beautiful ones. So good to be here with you all today. Welcome to the ceremony of menstruation. A few of you are still tuning in, so just give it a few minutes. While we're waiting for a few others to sign on, how is everybody doing? If you could just put in the chat where you're tuning in from today and how the sound quality is, if you can hear me well. And we'll get started in just a few minutes. Welcome, Gabrielle. Welcome, Denise. Welcome, Patty and Kate. Hi, Gail. Amy. Maris, Leela, Haley. Hello, beautiful sisters. Thank you for tuning in. And welcome to this beautiful workshop and this gathering. Every time that we join together like this, magic happens. And this is the power of women's work. This is the power of the sacred study of womanhood. And so I am very excited to be here with you all and to be diving into a topic that is very near and dear to my heart. Ceremony of menstruation, the sacredness and the ritual surrounding the healing ritual of menstruation in the moon time. It's a powerful initiation for us as women and as carriers of wombs, a sacred topic to be discussing. So welcome, welcome. And without further ado, we'll get started. So before we begin, I just want to acknowledge each and every one of you for tuning in today. Whether you are a menstruating person with a womb, or you are here to learn more about this sacred cycle, to show up more fully for your loved ones who do menstruate, or whether you are a menopausal woman, a grandmother, an elder coming here to learn more about the sacred ceremony of menstruation in order to pass it on to your daughters, to your granddaughters. I honor you, I celebrate you, and I thank you for hearing the call to be here together today and to tune in. We're going to be entering into a portal, entering into the womb of creation, which is what happens when women gather. Because through our wombs, we can access this portal of power, this portal of magic. And so before we dive in, I want to just take a moment to tune in, each of us, with our own wombs. And I want to acknowledge, even if you don't have a physical womb, all humans have an energetic womb. It's called the Hara, and it's an energetic portal of power that lies below our navel and is representative of our umbilical cord to all of creation. And so we are going to be accessing this antenna and this connection today as we dive into the sacred womb wisdom. And so let us take a moment to tune into our own place of power, our throne of wisdom. If you feel comfortable to close your eyes, you can do so, or if you feel more comfortable just to keep the eyes soft, go ahead and place your hands on your womb space, tuning in to this throne of wisdom, to this throne of royal power that is our connection to the source of all creation. That is our connection to the cosmos and to the sacred Earth Mother. That carries within it our genetic blueprint connecting us to our life purpose, why we came here. And allowing yourself to breathe into your womb. Breathe into this place of power. And whatever the reason for bringing you here to this space today, whether you are seeking the tools to take your ceremony of menstruation into a place of deeper spiritual connection, whether you are in search of the tools and the ways in which to eliminate pain and discomfort in your cycles, whether you're seeking to receive greater knowledge in order to share it with your loved ones and share it with your community, really allowing yourself to just settle into this intention, whatever you have, whatever brought you here, whatever made you hear the call to go into this study. And when you're ready, you can open your eyes and come into this space where we are together as women of the earth, as women of the stars, as women of the cosmos. Today we are going to be diving into many incredible threads of wisdom. We are going to be talking about how to unleash or liberate your divine feminine voice. We are going to converse about how to transform the burden or the curse of menstruation into one of the greatest blessings of your life. And finally, we're going to be going into a step-by-step guide on how to heal all pain, discomfort, cramping, PMS from your cycle forever. And so what a beautiful thing to come together like this and to be desiring to learn more about our bodies. And to me, it is a testament to the times that we're living in. These are times of great change, great transformation, and just the fact that we're here having this conversation today is testament to that. We find ourselves in times that are radically different than the times of our mothers and our grandmothers. We are here as women warriors committing to making the change in our life that is necessary to find true fulfillment, empowerment, to claim our lives, to claim our joy. And one of the main ways to do this is through coming home to ourselves. And so this is what we're going to do in today's workshop. We'll be opening the space throughout for questions, so definitely stay tuned and make sure you stay till the end, because we're going to be getting into some really simple but incredibly life-changing and helpful tools that you can start doing today to radically transform your relationship with your body and your cycle. So we'll get right into the first topic, which is how to uncage the authentic feminine voice and liberate your feminine power. So first of all, when we're talking about the feminine power, we're talking about our authenticity. We're talking about the wild primal power that exists within our own wombs. And when we want to unleash or liberate or come into greater relationship with this power, we have to understand the current situation that our society has created for us and for all beings, because we are not a menstruation conscious society. Menstruation and menstruality is a taboo subject and has been a taboo subject for thousands of years. And menstruation has been labeled many things: dirty, unclean, a curse, a burden for women to carry. And it has been celebrated in this way, or constructed, I should say, in this way for a reason. I'm going to tell you the reason why it's been constructed this way, because it's really important if we're wanting to unlock the hinges that liberate the remedy or the healing balm for this dilemma that we have come into contact with in the 21st century today. For thousands of years, the patriarchy has reigned in today's in our society and across the world. It hasn't always been this way, and it's important to recognize that we used to live 5,000 years ago in a time where the great feminine, the divine feminine, was revered, celebrated, and respected, and indigenous and aboriginal traditions and tribes and cultures all over the world developed their own rituals and practices celebrating womanhood, celebrating menstruation and the sacred power of menstruation. But with the rise of the patriarchy, these wisdom teachings were forgotten. They were suppressed. And they were suppressed because it benefited the patriarchal system that women were not connected to their bodies. Because as women, as life bearers and life givers, we are in many ways close to the creative life force of the creator. We're very close, and when we bleed and when we create life through carrying child, we touch upon that force. And so of course that level of empowerment, that level of connection with our source essence didn't serve the patriarchic system. It didn't serve the values that were needed to be accepted by all of humanity in order for the patriarchy to flourish. And so about 5,000 years ago, we entered into this period of forgetting. During this period of forgetting, there was an intense shaming that took place upon the female body and upon women, and it was considered to be a burden, and there was conditioning given around our female bodies that we began to believe because we forgot the inherent ancient wisdom that was practiced by our ancestors for thousands and thousands of years. Now, in the 21st century, we find ourselves in this beautiful time where many of us are choosing to return to this ancient wisdom, return to the ways of our ancestors and our grandmothers, and to reclaim this sacred power. And part of this reclamation takes place within the menstruation, within our feminine bodies, within our cycles, and within our rhythms. Part of the reason why this empowered feminine didn't have a place in the patriarchy is because the patriarchy mounted a solar-based system. What is a solar-based system? A solar-based system is a system that values and places emphasis on doing, production, and success. Essentially, things that happen when the sun is out. That's the definition of a solar-based system. We as women are lunar-based systems, meaning that our design is in the image of the moon, of the lunar cycle. And so within us lies the ebbs and the flows and our own waxing and waning that takes place within us throughout every single cycle that we take. Every 28 days we go through a massive rebirth, transformation, and death process. This process is beautiful. This process is powerful. This process holds the keys to your remembering process and your connection with your ancient primordial wisdom. And so when we talk about this design that we are, and we try and fit it into the solar-based system, we see clash, right? These systems don't work together. They don't function together. And so this is the root cause of our own denial of our divinity. The fact that we are lunar-based systems trying to function in a solar-based society has created an extreme disconnect with our authentic, wild, primal power. This is because we find ourselves trying to keep up with the game, or keep up with the rat race, you could call it, or whatever is the name of the cultural values and conditionings that we have bought into, that we've been conditioned to abide by. And so we often as women find ourselves lost within this, disconnected from our true power, disconnected to our throne of wisdom. And within this disconnection often comes imbalance, dis-ease, sadness, depression, and most of all, disempowerment, because we have learned to deny who we truly are and have been trying for generations to be something that we're not, something that will never be. And so this process of unleashing our wild feminine power, unleashing our wild feminine voice of authenticity, very much has its roots in coming home to ourselves. This, beloved sisters, is cyclical consciousness. Cyclical consciousness is a perspective that will allow you to start to make the changes that you need in your life in order to live a more resonant life from your heart, from your womb, more attuned to the frequency of nature, your innate nature, and your primordial power. Cyclical consciousness is about honoring that we are made in the image of the moon, that we are made in the image of our earth mother. We are made of the earth. And so the more that we attune to her, the more that we seek to be more like her, and the more that we allow ourselves to settle in to our natural ways, our natural authenticity, which has moments of great expression and great external focus, and also these moments of deep internal renewal and reflection and rebirth. The more that we allow ourselves to accept all that we are in all of the different facets that we are, the more we're able to live a more aligned life that's more attuned to our divine power. As women, the moment that we stop trying to be something that we're not and settle more into who we are as women of the earth, a great shift takes place, and you have unleashed your wild feminine power. Yes, of course, this is something that requires cultivation, but in this simple shift of perspective, tremendous strides can be made. And so I want to share with you all this way of perceiving life, with the hope that it can radically transform the way that you live your life, the way that you schedule your commitments, the way that you plan for your cycle, and the way that you perceive your own womanhood. When we look to the Earth Mother, one of the most beautiful ways in which we can learn from her is in the way that she changes from season to season. She has her natural birth, flourishing, blossoming, internal introspection and death process that takes place every year throughout her 4 seasons. And because we're made in her image, we also have these inner seasons. I'm going to talk to you now a little bit about these inner seasons and how you can actually utilize them to adapt your life in a more feminine way, more attuned, more aligned to your natural rhythms and natural power. So these inner seasons are just like the Earth Mother: winter, spring, summer, and fall. And within these seasons, we parallel our menstrual cycle. And so the first season begins with day 1 of our menstrual cycle. And our menstrual cycle is a time of great rebirth. We actually have a spiritual death every time we menstruate, and we go deep into the void and we die to the parts of us that no longer serve us. We die to the parts of us that need to be purified, that need to be healed, that need to be reborn. This is a time in which it's better for us to really take space away from the external world. And a key element in harnessing the power of your menstrual cycle is in honoring that this truly is your inner winter. Once you realize that we have beauty and power within the inner winter, you'll be able to harness and activate the healing power that resides within your menstrual cycle even more. And so this period of rebirth is very much a strong internal process where we're literally liberating, purifying deep ancestral karmas, cleansing our wombs, healing and releasing pains and attachments, giving way, making way for the new, so that we can begin this new cycle refreshed, cleansed, purified, and healed. In this way, the menstruation 100% is a medicine. It has the same frequency as life, as plant medicine, as nature, and it contains 100% the same healing power. And so when we come out of the winter season, it's natural to feel like a brand new baby, refreshed, coming into a new life, a new version of ourselves. It sometimes feels like we're a deer, a baby deer, still figuring out how to use our legs in those first days following our moon. Because what's happening here is the beginning of spring is taking place. But just like nature doesn't full-fledged into summer right away, there's a transitional period. There's a transitional period where our attention slowly becomes more externally focused, where we're able to return to our daily normal responsibilities with ease and grace. And like this, spring serves as a warm-up, as a way for us to get into the rhythm of this upcoming cycle, to set intentions for this upcoming cycle, and to begin to focus our attention outwards. And then before we know it, we've arrived at our inner summer, which is also known as the ovulatory phase. This is the time when we are most radiant and most external. It's the time when we're most comfortable with having the spotlight be on us, and it's a time when we're most willing or wanting to be more external with our projects, with our commitments. It's a really great time to attend social gatherings. It's a wonderful time to plan for speaking engagements or external projects and commitments. And many of us flourish in our summer. This is a time that is most valued by our solar-based society, right? So this is a time when we're often feeling our best because what's happening within our own internal rhythms is what's most accepted in the society that we live in. So there's congruency there. And so many of us feel at our most optimum during the inner summer phase. So much so that towards the end of our inner summer phase, we find ourselves trying to extend it, even pushing ourselves a little bit more than what our body is really capable of, because internally we're starting to prepare for inner autumn. And inner autumn is all about beginning to prepare for our menstruation. We're in the premenstrual phase, and our bodies are naturally wanting to prepare for that cocooning, wanting to prepare for the sacred ceremony that is just around the corner and upon us. And so the more that we can allow for each season to be what it's naturally wanting to be within our bodies, the easier we find ourselves in tune with our natural rhythms, and the more productive we can actually be in our cycle as a whole. Oftentimes when women experience lethargy or fatigue, it's because they're not fully in tune with their own inner rhythms and their inner cycles. For example, trying to do too much in the inner autumn, or right out of the gate in the inner spring, right after we've bled, jumping right back in full force. When we do this, we basically set off our internal clock, and we're not doing ourselves any service. When in fact, if we're able to sync more fully and get to know our inner rhythms, get to know more fully what's happening within our body, we can not only show up better for ourselves, but we can align more fully with our natural inclination of success and output, as well as nurture the natural tendencies and need for input and internal reflection. The more that we allow ourselves to be who we are, lunar based, made in the image of the moon, the more we learn how to accept our own divinity. And that, my sisters, is one of the main keys in unleashing and unlocking your wild feminine power and your voice. So much of the feminine voice has been suppressed in our society. And again, going back to the understanding of the patriarchy, an empowered feminine voice was not conducive to the patriarchy. And so many different tactics and ways were implemented in order to keep a woman small, and to dim her light. Now, recognizing what that is, recognizing it for what it's not, we can start to make shifts to take our power back, not from anyone specific, but centering ourselves back into our own sacred power and letting ourselves live from that place of true radiance, true brilliance, true divinity, and sacred femininity. This is when it feels so good, when we allow ourselves to be who we are and settle into this and cultivate this. And I want to share that through doing this work of coming home to ourselves, of recognizing the places and the times in our lives where perhaps we have abandoned this part of ourselves in order to be accepted by others or by society's values and conditionings, we are in turn reclaiming that and bringing everything full circle. And in doing so, we're not just doing it for us. And this is so important. And every time that we share this every time I share this with women, it resonates so deeply, because when we start to recognize that we're so interconnected, when we start to recognize that what's happening within us, of our own disempowerment, of our own dimming of our light, when we start to recognize that that's not an individual experience, but rather what's happening on the collective feminine consciousness, we can see how us doing this work on an individual level not only brings healing to our own lives and to, in turn, our families, our partners, our children, but we get to participate in the healing of the sacred feminine consciousness, the collective feminine consciousness, and we get to heal and purify our own lineages. When we think about, what our grandmothers' lives were like, what our great-grandmothers' lives were like, they didn't have access to this information. They lived in times where these conversations were not on the table, where menstruation was one of the biggest taboos in our culture, in our society. And slowly, now we are 200 years later, 100 years later, and we find ourselves in a time where we can have these conversations, where we have access to the tools that we need to purify this, to organize this. And in doing so, we actually are giving back to our grandmothers. We are reconciling something for them and bringing resolution for them for something that they were never able to resolve in their life because they didn't have access to it, because they lived in a different time. And so by understanding, by opening our eyes to the fact that this work is much greater than us, we can call upon greater strength. We can call upon greater courage, because this work is not easy. It's definitely not easy. It requires that we make huge changes in the way that we have been living our life, which at first can disrupt our lifestyles and our families' lifestyles in big ways. But if we commit to this balancing, this harmonization, what we'll find is that very quickly we start to see the abundance of blessings and harmony and balance that does come when we choose to say yes to our innate feminine nature and innate feminine power. And so this is one of the biggest keys to coming home to ourselves, to tapping into our ancestral, primordial, ancient power. And so I want to stop here and tune in and see if you guys have any questions before we keep going, and just to make sure that we're all on the same page and that we're all going into the same frequency, that same thread of ancient wisdom, because I'm not teaching here, sisters. I'm reminding you, this wisdom is within you. You know this. It's in your blood. And for those of you who are hearing it in this lifetime for the first time, it's a remembering process. It's a reclamation that is taking place, where you on a very deep level are saying, yes, I remember this. I remember this many, many lifetimes ago when I used to dance under the stars with my sisters during our menstruation. We entered into the sacred red tent together and praised the sacred divine mother and the sacred power of femininity and all that we are. And so this is what we're doing together. We're remembering. We're coming home. Jennifer just asked about if a cycle is not a normal 28-day cycle like it's supposed to be. This is a really great question. I'm super happy you brought it up. So a healthy cycle is considered anywhere between 24 and 32, 33, 34 days. If your cycle falls out of that range, 24 to 34 days, then there's an imbalance there that needs to be reviewed. And I'm going to talk in a little bit about how you can start to bring greater menstrual harmony, health, and balance into your life and into your body. But if your cycle is anywhere between 24 and 34 days, that's healthy. And it's something important to remember that every cycle is beautiful and every cycle is very unique. And by getting to know your unique cycle, you are going to understand your unique makeup so much more. And you're going to get to know who you are. And so I highly recommend that you begin to get to know your cycle by tracking your cycle. And you can do this simply by keeping a journal of the days of the cycle, what day you're on, what your emotional feelings are, where you are, if you know that you're ovulating, to make note of that, and to start going into this process. And simply by taking note and observing, you're going to go into a very deep learning process of getting to know your own body's rhythms. And by getting to know your own body's rhythms, you'll start to know when something's not right. You'll start to know more clearly and more authentically what you need. And like this, it can serve as an incredible starting point and tool that you can start today that will radically transform your life. In my personal experience, I noticed through tracking my cycle, I brought greater cycle regularity into my cycle. So simply by observing my cycle and making that conscious connection that I was going to show up, that I was going to observe, that I was going to be witness to my own internal rhythms, something clicked within my own bio makeup, and my regularity started to find greater balance and harmony. And I've talked to many, many other women who have noted the same thing. And so that's a really, really powerful tool. A few women are noting some apps, and these are really, really great. One thing that sometimes the apps don't take note of are the internal emotional processes. And so that is one thing that I highly recommend that you do take journal of. And so that's particularly really recognizing our internal waters. If you start to recognize, for example, that there's a certain time of the month when you have the same fight with your partner, this is something ancestral. This is a deep wound that is wanting to resolve. And so by starting to track the emotional changes and the internal waters that take place in the week to week changes between our cycle, because our hormones actually change 25% fluctuation from week to week. And so there's a lot going on and there's a lot taking place constantly. And so the more that we start to attune to our internal rhythms like that by being very observant, we can actually utilize it as a tool for our spiritual healing and our spiritual growth and evolution. Okay, just taking a look. So I see a few different questions about menopause and premenopause. So menopause is a sacred initiation in itself, and we're not going to be focusing too much on that today, but I just released a course called The Voice of the Womb, which is designed to support women in all phases of life in order to embrace these tools and these practices, and to get to know yourself wherever you are, whatever stage of womanhood that you're in. I focus a lot on menopause in this course, and so I highly recommend that you check it out. You can go to mywombbmedicine.com, and I'll talk more about that course at the end. But just to stay focused on the menstruality and also on tracking and getting to know our inner rhythms, Alexa is asking about the connection with bleeding on the full moon versus the new moon, and if that means anything. This is a wonderful question, and it is said that if a woman is bleeding with the new moon, she's bleeding with the dark moon, she's bleeding the time of the lunar calendar when the natural circadian rhythms of the earth are calling all beings to go inwards, right? And so it is said that this is the most natural time to bleed, while on the other hand, the most natural time to ovulate would be around the full moon. And most women do ovulate around the full moon, and bleed around the new moon. However, each woman is different, and there's powerful medicine in both. For many years, I bled around the full moon, and what I came to realize during my study of this, because I was asking my body, I was asking my blood to teach me and to explain to me what the medicine was in bleeding around the full moon. And my moon taught me that I was bleeding around the full moon because I was in a time in my life where my focus was very external. I was working a lot in service with large communities, and I was needing the force of the full moon to synchronize and harmonize that energy. And so a woman who bleeds during the full moon oftentimes finds herself in that stage or phase in her life where she's very externally focused. And what I would say to a woman bleeding on the full moon is that the only thing that you want to really be aware of if you're bleeding around the full moon is that you are needing to go inwards in a time where the lunar energy of the planet is pushing outwards. And so sometimes that can be challenging to manage, especially with the internal process that we're going through and the need to be alone, right? And so the more that you can tune in and listen to what your body's telling you, the easier it will be, and the more power and medicine you will receive, and insight and teachings you will receive, depending on when you bleed. And it's also common that women's cycles change throughout their menstruating years. And for a premenopausal woman, a woman who's reaching the ends of her menstruating years, she'll notice tremendous flux, and she might not bleed every month. And so that's beautiful too, and carries tremendous power and beauty. And so any woman who's in that phase, how powerful would it be to savor each moon that you have left, and to go into each moon as a deep study, as a deep ceremony, as a deep communion with your own primordial force and wisdom. And like this, you reconcile with the ending, or the coming soon end of this phase of your life. And this makes for a much easier transition into menopause and into cronehood. And so with that, beloved sisters, I'm just looking through these questions. Yes, beautiful. So for the sake of time, your time, I want to keep on track and move on to the second topic that we're going to be discussing. And so the second topic is specifically on how we can transform the ceremony of menstruation, the ritual of menstruation, from burden or curse into a blessing, into a ceremony, into something sacred. We have to understand that this is a process of reclaiming and returning to ancient wisdom. This is not creating something new, but rather remembering something that is ingrained within the fibers of our being, within our own intuitive guidance system. So simply by tuning in, by trusting life, by asking life to show us and to teach us how to create ceremony, ceremony is created. Ceremony means making something sacred. And so through this process of honoring the sacred container, which is our moon cycle, honoring the sacred container, which is menstruation, we begin to create a powerful portal into our self-study, into our growth, into our initiation, and into our greater self-awareness and self-knowing. It's a great time to reflect. It's a great time to review. And more than anything, it's a powerful time to organize. Traditionally, thousands of years ago, women were revered for their menstrual cycles because it was a time when they would go out into nature and they would counsel the Great Spirit and receive guidance and direction, not just for themselves, but on behalf of the entire communities. And so the men and the non-menstruating people in the community celebrated these women for the work that they were doing, because they recognized it as a powerful service that they were giving for the benefit of the entire community, of the whole people. And so this is how we need to start to see our moon cycle, not just for us, but rather a tool that we can utilize to bring harmony and organization on behalf of our partners, our family units, on behalf of our ancestry, our lineage, the ones yet to come, a payment that we make to the Earth Mother, and something that we offer as our spiritual work. When we start to see it like this, the idea of it being a burden or something that we have to survive through, or just suck it up and get through it, that completely disappears, because we're no longer seeing it from the patriarchal lens that we've been conditioned to perceive it from. And instead, we're able to see it from a place of empowerment and from a place of recognition that this time of the month is the most sacred, and is the time of the month where our portal opens from heaven to earth, and we literally become a channel between heaven and earth. Our wombs act as like an antenna connecting us from the cosmos to the depths of the earth. And like this, we're able to receive downloads, clarity, visions, pintas, just like in plant medicine ceremony. And many women talk about how they get visions during their menstrual cycle. This is common and this is beautiful, and this happens when we create space to receive it, right? Has anyone heard of the moon brain? I feel fuzzy, I feel confused, I can't function in the solar-based system, I can't go to work on my moon. Of course not. We're literally in ceremony. We're connected to the cosmos, to the celestial realms. This is a time to pray. This is a time to celebrate. This is a time to listen. And so if we try and keep up with the day-to-day responsibilities and we don't change anything, this doesn't work. This creates problems. This creates more difficulty for us and makes the moon time much harder. And this is where the pain and discomfort originates. And I'll talk more about that in a little bit, but just so we start to get an understanding for when we create space for the ceremony of menstruation becomes more powerful and it more potent and can give us more, right? And so I'm going to be going into the ceremony of menstruation, and I'm going to talk to you a little bit about a sacred moontime ritual that I received from a Muisca grandmother from Colombia. And so before I do, I just want to touch really quickly on this concept of giving our blood back to the earth, because it's a really important element to understanding the power of menstruation and understanding our own feminine power. There's an ancient Hopi prophecy, you may have heard it, that says that when all women return their blood to the earth, the world will know peace and the men will return from war. Every time I hear this prophecy, I get shivers down my spine because it truly resonates on such a deep level. The prophecy, once again, is that when women return their blood to the earth, the world will know peace and the men will return home from war. And so essentially, as we remember our primordial wisdom and power, and remember how sacred the moon time is, and give honor and reverence to our blood as a sacred elixir of life, in doing so, we restore harmony upon the earth, and we bring greater balance back to humanity so that we can end more pain, suffering, and separation forever. This is happening, sisters. This is not some theoretical prophecy that may happen one day. This is already happening. Women are remembering. We are doing it. And a big key is in this element of connecting to our blood and our primordial power through the elixir of our blood. Our blood contains within it genetic codes and blueprints of our ancestral memory and why we came here. Within it, unique to each woman, has ingrained our life purpose. Every human being, before they incarnated on this planet, before we decided to take the flight and incarnate in this physical body, we were given a purpose, a soul purpose, and we agreed to that purpose. We literally made an agreement to come to earth and fulfill that purpose. And our purpose, whether we know it or not in this moment, is encoded within our blood. And so when we choose to return to our blood, to respect, revere, and love our blood, we remember our purpose. And so knowing this, it doesn't make sense to flush our blood down the toilet, because in doing so, we're literally throwing away our ancestral power. But of course, we didn't know this. This is just what we were taught. And when most of us think back to our first period, there was a lot of shame, guilt, and embarrassment surrounding it. And many of us weren't even properly taught how to use a tampon or what to do with our blood. And so there was tremendous confusion and shame surrounding that. And so we never really had a positive connection with our blood. And so for many of us, that first step in creating sacredness around our ceremony of menstruation is in connecting with our blood in that way. And so I'm not going to go into too deeply, but essentially most tampons are infused with synthetic chemicals which cause us to bleed more, so that we buy more tampons. And the tampon and pad industry is a monopolized industry focused on making money and not on supporting the female bodies. And so it's really important, if you take just one thing away from today's workshop, that you really investigate and make a decision for yourself. If you're going to keep utilizing tampons, that you make a transition into organic tampons, and make sure that you're not buying the mark brands that are traditional, because they are very, very harmful to our bodies and can lead to disease. And a lot of reproductive diseases are caused by this. And so a good solution is the menstrual cup. For those of you who are not aware, the menstrual cup is a silicone menstrual cup that's inserted very similar to a pad, or excuse me, to a tampon. And it just suctions on to our vaginal walls, and it catches the blood, and then we're able to extract it, and there you have your spiritual payment, your offering in the cup, ready to give to the earth. And it's a really wonderful way to start to get into greater contact with your blood and start to have more a connection with this primordial power that exists. And like this, you can start to begin this practice of giving your blood to the earth, which is incredibly powerful and transformative. If you don't feel good putting something up there and you normally use pads, I recommend that you look into reusable cotton pads, which are wonderful alternatives, and they are made from cotton cloth that you can then soak in water and reuse, wash and reuse. They're completely sanitary, and that way you can harness your blood that way by taking the blood and the water and giving it to the earth. I also want to mention that giving your blood to the earth is really, really important and powerful, but we also need to be aware of where we give our blood, because like I mentioned, our blood carries so much ancestral memory and power that it's like a radar, and so it literally attracts everything, good things that we want, and that way we can start to utilize it to create and attract what we want in our life. But if we don't put it in a place with intention, for example, if we deposit our blood in a place where many people pass, very often very accessible to the public, then what we're doing is we're attracting everyone's energy that passes by, and we're drawing that into our field. And so it's important to take care and to have awareness and intention of where you place your blood. I recommend that you buy a tree or a plant and you make it your moon plant, and like this you begin to nourish that plant, even perhaps creating an altar with that space and making it your moon altar, making it the place where you offer your blood every month. And like this, you begin to fortify and nourish these seeds of your innermost dreams and desires through this practice and through this intention of directing your prayers to one specific tree. And so that is all I want to share with you for now about moon cups and giving your blood to the earth. People are asking about some different brands, and one thing I would say is that finding the right moon cup is different for every woman, right? Because every woman's design is slightly different, and so often requires trying out a few different cups. And then I would recommend that you don't give up, that you try a few if it hasn't worked from the first ones, and find the one that fits best for you. On Four Visions Market, we sell a really amazing cup that's actually a teenage size, and so it just means that it's a little shorter and it's not so long, which the length is typically what makes the diva cup uncomfortable for women. And so the teenage cup is actually the size that I use, and it works for most pre-birth women who haven't given birth. And so you can look into that, do a little bit of research. There's a lot of cups available, and so it's a really wonderful time when we are getting more and more resources to support us in these practices and in these sacred honoring and remembering process. Rachel's asking how long we should keep the blood in our fridge before we give it back to the earth. About that, it's best to give your blood every day, and I'll talk about why in just a moment, specifically in relation to the ritual that I'm going to be sharing with you. But essentially, instead of guarding it and keeping it, we can keep our connection with the Earth Mother very active and present on each day of our moon, simply by going out to her and meeting with her every single day. And so there's no need to store the blood throughout your cycle, but rather making those offerings every day. If you do need to guard your blood, perhaps you're traveling, perhaps you're not able to give those payments every day, then that's fine. But of course, it's live matter, so if you keep it too long, it's going to start to smell, right? So we want to always just be aware of that. Alexa's asking any specific recommendations for a tree or a plant. You can really tune in and allow yourself to trust your intuition about this. Really beautiful plants would be rosemary, lavender, plants that are feminine plants, calendula, lilies, feminine flowers are really, really beautiful. Or a strong redwood tree serves for an incredible recipient to our blood. One thing that you want to keep in mind is that we don't want to give our blood to plants with thorns or medicinal plants. So that would mean that we don't want to give our blood to a rose bush, for example, because it has thorns, and so it's said that that bitterness can come back to us if we give our blood to a plant with thorns. And then secondly, with the medicinal plants like tobacco, cactus, ayahuasca or yahe or peyote, these plants contain such a strong frequency that there's a clash between the frequency of the menstrual cycle and the moon and the blood and that of the medicinal plant, because the moon is its own plant medicine, right? It's its own medicine. And so it's best to keep those plants separate. And other than that, really just follow your intuition and allow yourself to tune in. Okay, so I'm going to begin now to share with you about the cannabis. Would be no, because it's a medicinal plant and it carries its own healing frequency that's very, very strong. And so, but motherwort would be okay. So hopefully you can start to see the difference here between like psychedelic plants or plants with strong healing properties that come from tradition versus plants that are used day to day, like herbal allies. And then two more things that are responses to questions that are good for clarification. We always want to dilute our blood slightly with a little bit of water so as not to shock the roots of the tree, because our blood carries so much minerals and vitamins that if we weren't to dilute it, we could kill the roots of the tree or the plant just because of how powerful and potent it is. So you can just dilute it 1-to-1 water, and like that, the plant will be super happy, and you'll find that your moon plant flourishes and grows really fast and is very, very happy because it's receiving your divine blueprint and your divine connection to spirit, and something very, very beautiful to watch your moon plant grow and flourish. And then secondly, in regards to giving it to the earth, instead of pouring it on top, you do want to bury it. So if it's a potted plant, definitely find a way to get into the roots below, at least 3 inches below the soil. And the same goes for if you're planting it in the ground, in the earth, just so that the energy can be protected by the soil. Right? We don't want it to just be on top where anyone walking by would have a connection with our blood, because that's something so intimate. It's between us and the Creator. And this is a key to our spiritual power, sisters, protecting our blood. And so when we start to think about this from a grand scale, we can reflect on all the ways in which we, without knowing, may have attracted energies that were not serving us into our life simply without having this information, right? How many times did we leave a tampon in a public restroom and leave that energy? Every time that we didn't guard our power, guard our blood, we were susceptible to energetic leaks. And so these practices are crucial and life-changing in learning how to guard your own spiritual power, learning how to cultivate your feminine wisdom. And so with that, I want to go into this sacred traditional ritual. And for the menopausal women on the call, I want to preface this ritual by saying that this is a ritual that is available to all beings. Men and women could potentially do this ritual, but it is actually a really wonderful thing for a menopausal woman to participate in as well. And even though you don't have your blood to offer, you can utilize a glass of water that you've prayed over, or if you feel like there's reconciliation to be done surrounding your moon times, you can offer a glass of red wine, and like this you can make a spiritual payment in connection with your past moons and seek forgiveness, healing, and reconciliation surrounding that relationship by using red wine. And so this ritual that I'm going to share with you now is an offering. It's a spiritual payment. It's a way for you to start to go creating organization, ritual intention surrounding your moon. And I'm going to share with you in the way that it was received by me, by the Muisca grandmother. However, it's a ritual that you can adapt as you see fit. So it's really important that you listen to your intuition with all of these practices, adapt them to your cycle. For example, this is a 4-day ritual with the 5th day for intention setting, but if you bleed for 6 or 7 days, you might need to adapt the intentions and the way that you outline from day to day, depending on what your cycle calls for. So the idea behind this ritual is that for each day, you set a different intention and you focus your spiritual studies, your connection through meditation, through prayer, through awareness on that particular intention. And like this, we go organizing our lives. As women, we are often not just holding for ourselves, but we're often holding for our families, for our children, for our partners. And we are the container for our family in many ways. That's one of the roles of the woman, because again, going back to the aspects of the great mother, of the earth mother, she holds all of her children and we are made in her image. So whenever we're wanting to better understand our own feminine nature, we can look to her. And she goes informing us, she goes teaching us about who we are, what our makeup is, what our inherent essence is. And so like her, we often carry and hold a lot, and through this ritual you can begin to clean your house, your internal house. And your internal house doesn't just include you. So I'll explain now, day by day, the intentions for this ritual. The first day is the day in which we clean for ourselves. We take the day focusing on our relationship with ourselves and the past cycle. So specifically, we go reviewing how we have shown up for ourselves in the past cycle. That means the ways in which we have chosen to act, speak, and think, really reviewing and cleaning any decisions that we made, any thoughts we had, anything that we said that wasn't in alignment with our truest heart, with our purest essence. And going back to the first topic that we spoke about at the beginning, really allowing ourselves to hone into this idea of not abandoning ourselves anymore and coming home to ourselves anymore. We can utilize that as kind of a navigator for this first day, for this first intention, and we go reviewing the past cycle. How did I show up for myself? Where were the ways in which I went against myself? Maybe I gossiped about someone else, and that is a reflection of me and my relationship with myself. Or maybe I spoke poorly about my body to someone else, and in doing so I planted a negative seed, and so I have to go cleaning that seed, cleansing and healing that seed. And so that's what this first day is all about, reviewing ourselves. How did we show up this last cycle? What do we need to heal? What do we need to let go of? And really allowing ourselves to organize our relationship with ourselves. The second day, we bleed for our men. This is a day when we can offer our blood for our partners, our fathers, our brothers, as well as for our children who don't have this sacred ceremony. In this way, we begin to offer our blood on behalf of our family, on behalf of our loved ones who also need this blessing of purification and of healing. And like this, when we go offering our blood to the earth on this day, we bring them into our mind's eye. We bring them into our hearts. Perhaps our son is struggling at school, or perhaps we are praying for our brother, and our brother calls us and says that he needs our help with something. And so as we start to get out of the way and take on this beautiful spiritual work and this beautiful cleaning and organization process, we start to see a lot of beautiful synchronicities in our life, the ways in which this work ripples out and affects our loved ones and those closest to us in very powerful and beautiful ways. And so this second day is specifically for those who are closest to us, ideally who we share blood or fluids with, right? So that would be our blood relatives or our partner who we're the most intimate with. And like that, we can utilize this magical elixir of life to heal in their name and to organize for them. The third day, we bleed for our life purpose, for our work, for our service. And this day is very important. This day is very potent because it's a day in which we are able to check in with ourselves. Oftentimes, as women, we're juggling a lot and we have a lot on our plates. And so it's very easy to get swept up in the day-to-day. But what this day is all about and designed for is for us to really check in with ourselves, to check in with our innermost dreams, to see if we are cultivating and nourishing our passions and our desires, if we are in alignment with our life purpose and our mission, or if we found ourselves in the last cycle getting sidetracked or perhaps pulled in a direction that wasn't fully in alignment with our highest calling, our truest calling. And so like this, we can utilize this day to organize that energy. And it's a wonderful day also to pray about projects. If you're in the middle of a project and you've come up into some blockages, or you've found yourself in, just some conflict at work, or something that's not flowing, you can utilize the offering on this day to give your blood to the earth and ask for that blockage to be lifted, purified, cleaned, and organized. And so this is a very powerful day for clarity and for guidance. And you can ask for guidance too, because like I mentioned, this is when our portal is open, sisters. This is when we can listen and receive the most divine guidance and counsel from our divine mother and our great creator. And so we have to open our ears. We have to get quiet. We have to open our hearts and our wombs and really be open to receive the divine guidance that is literally wanting to come through us and be poured into us. So it's really a matter of just listening and opening ourselves. And like that, beautiful clarity will start to come. The fourth day is a day in which we bleed for our grandmothers, our ancestors, our teachers, and our guides, both living and non-living. This is a day of reverence. This is a day of honoring. This is a day of acknowledging those who walked before us, who opened the path and paved the way for us to be here today. And so it's a beautiful day to give thanks and to offer our blood in gratitude to everyone who made it possible for us to be here today in this life, living the life that we're living. And so it's a beautiful day to also pray for their essence, for their spirits to be well, to be strengthened, to be fortified by this prayer and by this payment that we're making on their behalf. And like this, we are able to create the prayer and make the prayer bigger than just us. And that's what makes this ritual so powerful and so transformative. We're able to utilize this life-changing elixir of our blood and utilize it as a vehicle for healing, as a vehicle for forgiveness, as a vehicle for resolution on behalf of our loved ones and on behalf of ourselves. And so it's important that this day be the last day that you bleed, and you'll adapt this ritual as need be based off of how many days you bleed, so that by the time you get to this final intention, this is the morning after you stopped bleeding. And this is a day of placing intentions for the upcoming cycle. And so you want to go out onto the earth and lift your hands up in praise to the grandfather sun. And it's good to do this practice in the morning when the sun's rays are just beginning to shine down. And you express your gratitude and your thanks for this sacred cycle of rebirth. And you feel and allow yourself to be rebirthed by the sun's golden rays. And you plant the seeds that you would like to plant for the upcoming cycle, the intentions that you would like to hold. And you plant them in your heart. You plant them in your relationship with the great grandfather sun. And with your feet connected to the earth, you root your prayers down into the earth mother. And like this, our moon time becomes transformed into a powerful ritual of communion, of organization, and of healing. I've had moon times that have been more powerful than some of my yahe ceremonies or my plant medicine journeys, because I've been able to tap into the frequency, the healing frequency, and the medicine that exists within my blood. And this is what I want for all women, truly, because it changed my life, and I want you to have the same connection and empowerment, where you feel and know your own healing power so deeply, and you're attuned and in tune with your own unique, innate, primordial healing power, that you learn to become your own healer. And this, sisters, is the most empowering thing that you could ever do for yourself. Learn how to be the healer of your own life. So I'll take some questions about this ritual now. So for the days that are lighter, can you recommend how to give blood when there is not enough to fill the cup? So there's a few ways you can go about that. If there are days that are really light, I recommend that you wear a reusable cotton pad that day, and you can just rinse or soak that pad overnight following the day that you used it, and in the morning all of the blood will have soaked into the water and you can give that blood. And then and like that you can still really ensure that every drop of blood goes back to the Earth Mother. And then someone's asking if you bleed a lot during the day. So if you bleed a lot on one day, this is telling you something. This is telling you that that particular day is bringing up something to be organized, and that's where the power of this ritual gets magical. Because, for example, if you're bleeding a lot on the second day, that is all about the masculine. So that's telling you that there's something that needs to be resolved there. If you bleed a lot on your third day, that's informing you and sharing with you that there's something within your life purpose that needs attention, that needs awareness and intent put towards it. And like that, you start to organize. But specifically, if you're saying that you bleed more than one menstrual cup per day, that's totally fine. You can just empty it into a cup, and then when you have that second cup filled, you can bring it all to the earth together like that. Truly, it's really about listening to your intention. It's really about following your inner guidance system. There's no one right way to do this. It's about remembering. So if you're getting the intuition to go out and give your blood to the ocean, for example, if that's coming in really strong, do it. Study what that's like. Traditionally, we don't give our blood to bodies of water. We give it to the earth. But if that's what you're feeling really strong, do it and investigate. Because if you follow your intuition, if you follow that silent voice of integrity, you are unleashing your authentic feminine voice. That is how you empower your voice, by following your intuition. And that is one of the most beautiful gifts that you can give yourself. And through doing it, you'll figure out what works and what doesn't, right? And so if you get a clear no, or if something that feels off takes place, for example, a weird encounter takes place after you after you give your blood on the beach, on a public beach, and you have a weird encounter, well, that's a no-go, right? That's telling you, that's showing you that was a place where there was too much energy there, and you planted your blood in a place where the energy was leaked, right? And so like this, as long as we're aware of these elements, and that's really what I'm wanting to give to you today, the awareness of everything. And then you can start to take this study. And what we believe in the plant medicine cultures is that the moon time is a study and womanhood is a study. So that means that whatever phase of womanhood we're in, we're doing a deep investigation of that phase. And it's not just a menstruating woman versus a menopausal woman versus a pregnant woman. There's many other phases of womanhood. And so the idea is to start studying the type of woman that we are, the role that we play. If you're in partnership, what does it mean to show up in partnership? If you are a new mother, what does it mean to be the role of mother and the role of sovereign woman? If you're in menopause, what does it mean to be an elder? What does it mean to come into greater reconciliation with your power in this new phase of life that you find yourself in? And so the study of womanhood is all about opening ourselves to this investigation, following our intuition, asking questions, listening to the inner guidance within. And like this, you start to empower yourself. You start to fortify your spiritual power and your spiritual medicine. Someone is asking that, she says, I usually start spotting, then it stops for a day or two, then the blood flow and cramps come on day 3 and 4. So spotting doesn't it does not signify that your moon is started. The official day 1 of your next cycle begins when the blood flow begins. And the spotting is normal. It's your body regulating. There's fluctuations in hormones, and your body hasn't fully decided to start to bleed. But there are things that you can do to bring greater regularity into your cycle to have a healthier cycle. And I'll talk about that in just a few minutes. But essentially, there's a lot of factors that we can look at. Right? What's the length of our bleed? What's the length of our entire cycle? So not just our menstrual cycle, but from day 1 to day 28 or day 32, however long it is. What's that length? What's the color of our blood? Does it start off really brown and look like it's very old blood? Or do we start our bleed on day 1 with a very rich red color, which is signifying health and vitality? And so, depending on the signs that your body starts to give you, you can start to adapt and start to make shifts and changes to bring greater health into your life and into your natural cycles. And like this, you're able to get into greater touch with what your body's telling you and what your body's needing. So someone's asking about birth control and if it's a effort to stop our empowerment. And what I would say about birth control is it can be dangerous. And I speak from experience because I was on birth control for 6 years and I developed chronic yeast infections and candida as well as leaky gut, all as a result from the synthetic sugars that are in the birth control pills. And so for a woman who is on birth control for many, many years, it can be harmful to our other bodily systems and it can create discomfort and disconnection, because when we're taking synthetic hormones, we're not tuning into our natural flow, we're not tuning into our natural rhythms, and we're not able to perceive our natural hormonal fluctuations. So imagine if we don't know our own body because we're shut off, because we're taking something that alters it, it makes it more difficult to connect with our own intuition, right? It makes it more difficult to connect with our natural rhythms. And so something something like this is very complex, right? Because not taking birth control doesn't provide for many alternative options. You have to really know your cycle. You have to know when you ovulate, if you're going to do fertility awareness method, which is when you track your cycle and you don't take anything synthetic, but rather get to know your cycle to the point where you know when you're fertile and you know when you're not. And so this is a wonderful topic, and maybe I'll do another workshop on it in the future. But what I would say is if you're taking any sort of synthetic hormone shifting, even if it's hormone support for menopause, what it does is really disconnects us from what's happening within our own inner waters, and it's harder to listen and it's harder to know what our body's telling us. And so whatever decisions you make, just be aware that that is like, it's a block. It blocks us from our portal of power. So I have another question. Is it better to do the ceremony on different days under the moon versus during the energy of the day? It's definitely better to do it during the moon time. Of course, at night, this is when all of the cosmos are awakened. This is when the forces of nature are the most awake. This is when the societal noise is the most reduced. And so this is why we have ceremony at night, for example. So yes, if you can get out under the moonlight and connect and have your ritual at night, this is ideal, this is best, but it's not necessary. And again, with all of these recommendations, we have to acknowledge some of us live in cities, some of us don't have access to nature, some of us have to adapt, right? And so we adapt, and it's beautiful and it's perfect. But simply having these tools of awareness, at least now you can start to make decisions from a place of consciousness, from a place of knowing your body and knowing your cycle. And so this is all I'm going to share about the moontime ceremony for now. But if you're interested in learning more, again, in my new course, Voice of the Womb, Songs of Wisdom, I take you on a step-by-step journey on how to more fully activate the voice of your womb, your connection with your feminine power. It's a really beautiful process that you go through that allows you to attune more in depth with your natural rhythms, with your natural intuition, menstruation, and it also teaches you really important elements, including womb cleansing, how to cleanse and care for your womb. And I also see a lot of women asking about imbalances, and so in this course I teach you how to treat your own imbalances and how to heal and create greater regularity, regardless of the phase of womanhood that you're in. This course is designed for women of all ages, and it's an incredibly empowering course. So again, this course is available through mywombbmedicine.com. And with that, I just, in the sake of time, I really want to honor all of your time and keep it to the 90 minutes that I said that this workshop was going to be. And so I'm going to go on to this last point that's really important, and it's specifically on 100% natural solutions that you can utilize to heal all pain, discomfort, cramping, and PMS. And so this topic is really important when we talk about menstruation, because one of the most popular reasons for a woman wanting to learn more about her cycle is because she is plagued by one of these discomforts and inconveniences. We all know it's no fun to be in bed for our entire moon time because we're full of pain and in tremendous cramps. And so I'm here to tell you that it doesn't have to be like that. When our bodies are expressing pain surrounding our moon time, they are trying to tell us something. This is not what our society tells us. Our society tells us that the moon is a burden, the moon is a curse, that it's something that we have to suffer through, that it's the curse of womanhood, and that there's nothing you can do except take an Advil and suffer through it. This isn't true, sisters. This is one of the biggest lies that the patriarchy is telling you. When your body is in pain around your moon time, it's because it is trying to tell you something. And I want to teach you how to start to listen to those signals and listen to those inner wisdoms. So essentially, part of your work going forward is to start to attune more fully to the voice of your womb, the inner voice of integrity and power and wisdom that resides within your throne of primordial power and presence. Within your womb lies all the answers that you need, how to heal yourself of chronic pain, cramping, and dis-ease surrounding your moon time. Oftentimes, these expressions of discomfort are because we're not listening to what our bodies are trying to tell us. Oftentimes a woman complains of tremendous cramping around her moon time, but she's going to work and working 12-hour days and not creating any sort of ritual and ceremony around her moon. And so her body literally is screaming to her, telling her, please recognize me. I'm in a process of deep healing and purification, and I need rest. I need privacy. I need intimacy to be able to do the work that my innate primal nature is wanting me to do during this time. And so a tremendous root of all pain that we experience around our menstrual cycles is because we have learned to ignore this need to honor the sacred ceremony. And so one of the big ways in which we can start to heal a lot of the discomfort, cramping, PMS, irritability that we experience is by starting to tune in, starting to listen. I was able to extremely shift and manage my hormone fluctuations simply by recognizing when I was in my inner autumn, simply by recognizing, okay, I'm preparing to bleed, okay, I'm in a time of great internal introspection as I prepare to go into the cocoon. And I started to tell my partner that I was in my inner autumn, and it changed everything. It made everything so much easier. There were no more big premenstrual blowouts or breakdowns, and it was as though I magically healed my hormonal imbalances and influx just simply by listening and acknowledging. And so a big element here that I can't stress enough is listening. Of course, let's be real. A lot of us have not listened for so long that we've developed illness, infirmity, endometriosis, ovarian cysts, which are direct causes of years and years of ignoring what our body is trying to tell us. But we can heal those too. And I'm telling you from direct experience and from the opportunity of having helped dozens and dozens of women heal their bodies on their own without any Western medicine, that it can be done. And it's a beautiful process of starting to heal the karmic ties that we've had with our own femininity, starting to take this journey of getting to know what your body is trying to tell you. And there's one other element that is really important that I want to talk to you about regarding how to heal all pain. And that is that our menstrual cycle acts as our body's natural cleanser, right? It's literally here to purify and heal us and to bring greater balance into our lives and into our entire body system. And so if there are other things in our life that are out of alignment, for example, if our diet is not healthy, or we don't have good exercise in our life, or we don't have good sleep cycles and sleep patterns, or we have a lot of conflict and disharmony within our relationships, guess what? Our moon time and our menstrual cycle is going to have to work harder to clean and organize that. And so one of the first things that I ask women when they come to work with me about their moon time and their cycles is, what is your spiritual, physical, mental, emotional health like as a whole? And so this is a really good question you can start to ask yourself, recognizing that what we put in our mouths, what we take in through our ears, through our nose, through our eyes, all of our sensory inputs are working and constantly processing everything that we feed it. And so when it comes to our moon time, our womb is going to receive the brunt of whatever we've put into our bodies over the last 26, 28, 32 days. And so one way in which we can start to really be a greater ally to ourselves and be a greater ally to our womb is by taking a look at all of these other elements in our life. And if need be, during the other parts of our cycle, when we're not bleeding, because we're already in a deep cleanse during our moon time, but when we're not bleeding, we can detox, we can do cleanses. And if you need support to do a cleanse, I recommend that you reach out to a holistic doctor or alternative medical doctor who can help design the proper cleanse for you and support you in that. Because if what you'll find is by liberating and cleansing the junk or the gunk, the stagnant energy that is built up in the other systems, your womb is going to have to work a lot less harder on when your moon time comes. And so it's going to be a lot more enjoyable and it's going to be a lot easier. And the other element is that you're going to be able to really learn what your based off of what your body is telling you, simply by opening and wanting to listen. So this is a really big key, and it might seem like I'm oversimplifying things, but I'm not. I'm really not, sisters. It's so simple. It's so simple that you might be thinking, why wasn't I taught this when I was 13? And the truth is, we all deserve to be taught this. And this is part of the reclamation process that's taking place. We're taking the power back. We're taking our own bodies into our own hands. We're learning how to be our own healers. We're learning how to care for our own sacred bodies. How many of you have gone to a Western medical doctor and felt like you knew more about your menstrual cycle than they did? I have, and the reality is that Western medicine has a huge gap in this area. And so a big part of your empowerment is learning how to care for your own body, because you know your own body better than anyone else. And that's just the truth, and that will never change. So if you can learn how to become an ally for your body by healing whatever challenges you experience currently in your cycles, and doing the work that you need to do, making the changes that your body is asking you to make, you become your own healer. You become your own medicine. And you allow yourself to tap into your divine, authentic blueprint and authentic power. And so this is one of the biggest keys. And if you're interested I really just want to say that everything I've shared with you in this workshop today is everything that you need to be successful. And you'll have the recording, go back and listen to it, because if you follow these guidances and these recommendations within you, you have everything that you need to organize and create the relationship with your body that you've always wanted, that you've always dreamed of, but perhaps didn't think it was possible. And so I want to affirm that all of this information is literally the toolbox, the blueprint that you need to go out and start doing this work. But if you're interested in greater support, if you're interested in taking it even more faster or with greater efficiency, if you're wanting someone to come along and support you step by step through this journey, I highly recommend that you look into my course, because this course was designed based off of my own healing journey and supported me in my own healing journey, and really just is a compilation of the 9 years of work, over 300,000 miles I've traveled all over the world, searching and studying at the feet of many different grandmothers, midwives, and indigenous healers. And so this course is designed to support you in the same journey that I've been taking with myself over the last 9 years. And so it's step by step over 4 courses. We go through this process of awakening, activating, remembering, cultivating. And it's an incredible opportunity and journey that you can take on your own, really going at your own pace to support you in doing this work. And we all know how it is. You're here with me now, and this is the time when you're the most committed to doing this, because we're present. We feel the power on this call between us as sisters and women of the earth. And so I really encourage you to act now, to go and get this course today and start this work right now. Because if you wait a week now, a week later, you know that the likelihood of you actually doing it is less. And that's just how the human psyche works. And so I share this with you from the bottom of my heart, with the desire that you can receive the same healing, empowerment, and connection that I have received through this process, through the remembrance of my womb and through the remembrance of my own sacred power. And I reflect all of this to you today with all of my love, with all of my devotion, with all of my gratitude. And I send you so much love, so many prayers of support. I believe in you, sister. I believe in you to heal yourself, to empower yourself, to remember your own inner radiance and authenticity, to organize your life so that it may be everything you've always wanted it to be. And so with that, I thank you tremendously for being here with me today, for saying yes to your womb, saying yes to your authentic wild power. And I send you all my love. May God bless you. May God guard you. May God keep you always. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Until we meet again, we'll be in touch. Have a beautiful rest of your day.